Shocking news when Jamie Dornan suddenly shared, "If I don't have money, Dakota won't come to me." Jamie Dornan stood on stage in a swanky Los Angeles concert hall. The lights were bright, the cameras were on him, and the audience was silent, waiting for an important interview. Today was an interview to promote the movie he was starring in, a role that Jamie felt marked a milestone in his career. But it wasn't the new movie, nor the critical acclaim, that he remembered most from the interview. It was the bold, shocking statement he was forced to make. The reporter looked into the camera, then pointed the mic at Jamie. "Jamie, you've talked a lot about your love for Dakota Johnson, about her sincerity, about how she sees you not just as a famous actress, but as a person. But there's been a rumor recently that you said, 'If I didn't have money, Dakota Johnson wouldn't be with me.' Can you confirm that?" Jamie took a deep breath, his eyes flashing with something like fear and determination at the same time. His face flushed slightly, like someone who had just revealed a long-hidden secret. He was silent for a few seconds, slow seconds in which every lens, every microphone, every light focused on him as if waiting for an answer. Finally, he said, "Yes, I said that." Point 1. The root of the word did not come out in a moment of loss of control. It had been brewing inside Jamie for a long time, from long nights of self-questioning, from comparative glances, from a feeling of insecurity that he had never expressed. A few years ago, when Jamie and Dakota were not as famous as they are now, at least, not so famous that everyone knew them, Jamie used to drive Dakota in his old car. On evenings under the streetlights, they stopped at small cafes, sharing the music Dakota was working on, sharing humble stories. Dakota was always full of passion, with her little guitar, with her musical ideas and acting. Jamie loved the way she laughed when she talked about being rejected for this role or that role, loved the way she believed in her dreams even though her life wasn't perfect. But as Jamie's career began to take off, big roles, awards, commercials, interviews, he began to feel a change, not just in the way people saw him, but in the way he saw himself, in the way he saw her, Dakota. One afternoon, as they sat in front of a roadside cafe, Dakota said, "I feel happy because I have choices, not because I have to accept anything just because of who you are or what you're becoming." Jamie smiled, but inside, there was a small fire. He wondered, if he hadn't been so lucky that day, if his career hadn't come to him, if he had remained a new actor, little known, short of money, short of opportunities, would Dakota have chosen him? Would she have continued to believe in him? Would she look at him with dreamy eyes, or would she find someone else who had everything she needed? The question was not new, but it grew inside Jamie like a boil. The feeling that he could lose the person he loved because of something he could not be sure of keeping, money, fame, status. 2. The moment of revelation. The interview that night was recorded live. When asked about it, Jamie felt millions of eyes on the screen looking at him. He knew that if he spoke out, he would shatter the perfect image that the press and the public were building, a man with talent, passion, and true love. But he also knew that he could no longer pretend that in his heart there was no feeling of jealousy, worry, or fear of loss. "Dakota is with me because of what I have now," he said in a few silent moments, then continued, "I know it sounds selfish, it sounds hurtful to her, and to the people who love me. But if I didn't have money, if I didn't have fame, would she choose you, choose me?" The reporters, and the audience, were silent. The whole room was silent as if all sound had been sucked out. There was breathing, there was the sound of cameras flashing. People looked at each other, people clenched their fists. 3. The heart's response. Dakota Johnson, somewhere backstage, heard this news, on social media, on friends calling. She had never heard Jamie say this publicly before. She felt a knife stab her heart. What she thought was faith, love, seemed to be weighed on the money scale. Everything inside her was a mess: anger, hurt, betrayal. Not because Jamie had said it, she knew the insecurity, but because he had suggested that her love could be defined by a zero on her checkbook. She remembered the days when there was nothing but music and hope, the small shows, the late rehearsals, the supporting roles she was proud of even though no one knew her name. She remembered Jamie saying she was the one who kept him going when he wanted to give up, that she saw him not as a fan or a lover but as a friend, a companion. She remembered the hugs, the small words in the late night, "I believe in you," and she did. Only now Jamie said that there was a limit to that trust, a limit defined by money. 4. Media storm. Soon after the interview, the news spread like wildfire. The press published, "Jamie Dornan, if it weren't for the money, Dakota wouldn't be with me." Comments from websites: "Arrogant, selfish, can love be measured by the bank balance?" Fans were divided. Some defended Jamie, saying he was just being honest about his fears. Others sided with Dakota, saying she deserved more than a backup when love was paid for with money. On Instagram, many wrote comments about the possibility of people falling in love for money. Some fans wrote letters of encouragement to Dakota. "You are a strong person, you know your worth is far beyond what he thinks." Others wrote, "Everyone gets scared, everyone can say things like that, let's give Jamie a chance to make things right." Dakota read the comments. Some made her smile, some made her swallow tears. She knew that in public, people liked to divide, they liked the story of the betrayed, they liked the conflict. But she wanted to understand from the inside, from the person who had spoken, why Jamie felt that way, whether it was true or just a feeling of pressure from fame, from pressure from success. 5. Jamie looked back. After the interview, Jamie returned to his villa, a large house, but that night, it felt like a glass cage. The lights in the living room were bright, his shadow cast long shadows on the wall. He sat alone, holding a glass of wine. Strong alcohol was not his habit, but tonight, it helped him calm the fluttering feeling in his chest. He remembered the time when he had not succeeded: small roles, low pay, lack of name recognition, lack of spotlight. He remembered the feeling of being underestimated, of being rejected, of being compared. He remembered the feeling of having to work twice as hard to hear the permission to appear. In that state, having money, having fame, having respectful looks, was a lifeline, a protective barrier. Jamie wondered, since when did he start thinking that money was the deciding factor in keeping people? Since when did he look at Dakota and vaguely think that without things, he would lose people? Did his career, his halo, his media success make him make invisible comparisons? He remembered the time Dakota told him when they were traveling, "I love you because of the way you treat me, because of the way you look at me, because of the way you make me want to be a better person." At that moment, the sun was setting, the sea was rippling, they were sitting on the sand, she was holding his hand, her eyes were sparkling. He remembered that smile, remembered the feeling of peace. He knew in his heart that there were times when he was not worthy, but she chose to be with him, not for money, not for fame, because of who he was. But the impact of success, of public opinion, of fame, it began to seep into his mind, every moment. He began to wonder, was everything he had, how people saw him, was it affecting the woman he loved? Would she accept him completely without anything like he had now? 6. The tense conversation. Dakota arrived at the mansion a few days after the news broke. She had read everything. Interviews, quotes, articles, everything. She knocked. Jamie opened the door. His face was tired, his eyes worried. "Dakota," he said, his voice choked. "You?" She walked in, her eyes looking around. The living room was quiet, the lights dim. She said, "Jamie, did you really say that?" If you didn't have money, I wouldn't be with you. Jamie didn't know how to answer, the words were dry in his throat. He was silent for a few seconds. Finally, she blurted out, I said what I felt. I'm not sure it was true, but it was a fear I carried with me. Dakota looked at him, sitting down on the sofa, her hands shaking slightly. You know I'm not someone who's easily swayed by money, right? There were days when we didn't have much money. I was still with you. She paused, tears rolling down her face. Not because you're famous. Not because you're famous. I chose you because you are you. Jamie lowered her head. I know, but sometimes I think, people, even you, look at what you have more than your talent, more than your determination, more than who I am. She put her hand on his shoulder. You're mine. I don't look at the bank account number. I look at the way you love, the way you care, the way you make me believe that I'm not standing with someone just because you can buy me things. Jamie looked at her, his eyes a mixture of love, regret, and a yearning for connection. Can you forgive me for what I said? Dakota choked. I want to understand, Jamie. I want to know why you think that way, out of fear, out of pressure, out of fame, so we can get through it together. Point 7. Through the public and private twists, over the next week, the two retreated from the media spotlight. Dakota limited their appearances together, Jamie declined some interviews. They spent more time together. They took walks during the day, watched movies at night, shared little things they might have missed because of their schedules. Jamie started keeping a diary, not for the public to see, but for himself to understand. He wrote about his fear of loss, about the pressure to succeed, about his Shay wants to be loved for who he is, not for what he has. Dakota reads the diary if Jamie shares it. She doesn't force it, but she understands his needs. She wants to be the one who makes him feel enough, not the one who makes him worry about his self-worth. She tells him, there's nothing I want you to do that you can't do with love and honesty. Jamie listens to her, and starts to act. For the first time, he turns down a very lucrative advertising offer, not because the money is low, but because it would keep him away from Dakota for the summer. Dakota is grateful. He tells her, I want to think that, with or without the big bucks, without the fame, you'll still be there for me. And I want to make myself the person who can keep you by my side, not because of fame but because of trust. Point 8. Our views have changed. The news spread. Jamie Dornan pulled out of a high-profile ad because of Dakota. Some people say he is doing a noble thing. Some people defend him doing all the PR work. But gradually, there is a change in Jamie's perspective. Not just a handsome, famous actor. Now he is a man with hair facing his own fears, confused about his insecurities, confused about doing small things to show that love is a priority. Dakota posted a photo of them walking together, holding hands. Caption: Love is not balanced by what you have, but by what you choose to share. She did not say directly I love you because you have no money, but she made it clear that money has never been the deciding factor in her feelings. And many people read it, touched, felt the story is simple but profound. Point 9. Jamie realizes something more important. One morning, when the light shone through the window, Jamie woke up next to Dakota. She was still sleeping soundly, her hair was slightly messy, the sunlight touched her skin warmly. He looked at her, filled with gratitude, that she was still with him, still looking at him with eyes of love, not distracted by outside things. Jamie made a promise to himself, never let fear take control of his heart. Love, theirs, would not be a math problem that he had to prove with money. He would let her find it, with actions, with presence, with sincerity, fullness, not dependent on a bank balance. Jamie whispered in her ear, when she opened her eyes, "Dakota, thank you for choosing me. When I said that on stage, I said it with a very real fear. But you showed me that there are things more important than money, love, trust, sacrifice, and how we can be together when things don't work out." She smiled, wiped her eyes, put her hand on his cheek. "Jamie, I chose you not because of what I thought you could offer, but because of the way I loved you, because you made me feel loved." Quote,